talk about complicated forgiveness, right? Complicated grief. There's anger, there's happiness, there's relief, there's frustration. There's all these myriad of feelings because we are complex human beings. And it's about how do we internally manage all that without puking on everybody around us, right? All our emotions.
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Taylor. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Taylor.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Taylor from SharonTaylor.com, as well as UnderstandingAutoimmune.com, where you can find all our previous 400-plus episodes of the show. And tonight I've got a fantastic guest. I've been waiting patiently for her to say, because we have been friends for a long time, and this lady is super busy and super awesome. I can't wait. And I also wanted to say you're probably going to be familiar with where she's from, because we have been a loving sponsor of her projects for a long time. You'll recognize her voice from the PSAs we run on the show. And her name is Dr. Shawne Duperon. And she is the founder and amazing lead of Project Forgive. That's her in the background, as well as she has a PhD in good gossip theory. We might ask about what's the difference between good and not so good gossip. And she is 6 Emmy Awards, 28 Emmy nominations, and an organic social media reach topping 100 million per month. And as I said, her name is Dr. Shawne Duperon of ShawneTV, and she's considered one of the most innovative and influential consultants and trainers in communication today. And as a recognized TV producer, Dr. Shawne strengthens organizations with compelling and strategic messaging for prime time. She's expert in conflict resolution tools, and the one that she's most known for, and I absolutely say changed my life, is the apology you'll never receive. And that, my friends, is all about a woman who garnered an honor of a Nobel Peace Prize nomination. So welcome, Dr. Shawne. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. And thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, Sharon.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to see you again. Yeah. It's been a long time since we've had an opportunity to be together in person, but I love seeing you here again. And congratulations. I know that Project Forgive has a documentary coming out soon.
Soon. I'm hoping to announce soon. It's been going on forever, since pre-COVID, post-COVID. Lots of stuff going on. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that I'll be able to announce it soon.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, did I let the cat out of the bag?
No, it's imminent.
Oh, okay.
It's imminent. So that was exquisite that you said that. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what is Project Forgive, so those who keep hearing the PSAs get a better grasp of how it works.
Project Forgive is an authentic reframe on how we understand forgiveness. It's complicated. It gets convoluted. Different religious and spiritual techniques get pulled in. So we take out all aspects of religion and look at the basic facts from research, what forgiveness actually is. And it's a powerful tool, inner tool and outer tool that we can use. And we love to reframe it because forgiveness is similar in how you experience it, is similar to your fingerprint. It's so unique. There's basic tenets to it. We love to talk about it. And I believe one of the reasons we're so popular is because we're the real deal and we talk about it authentically. None of that forgive and forget stuff. That's an old wives' tale or something somebody says is a cliche. Your child is murdered, you're not going to forgive and forget. So we unpack it and reframe it and make it suitable for how you live your life, both internally and externally. So you have some peace and some joy and a healthy balance of life. That's really what it is. Yeah.
It sounds so simple, and yet in my mind, as I'm going through it, and I've gone through your process several times, it's not as simple as it sounds.
No, it's not. The directions are simple. The internal angst that you go through trying to embrace things in a new way or see things with your critical thinking and incorporate it with your heart, now that gets tough. And, here's a perfect example. I have an ex-husband that died this week, right? I have an ex-husband that died. Talk about complicated forgiveness, right? Complicated grief. There's anger, there's happiness, there's relief, there's frustration. There's all these myriad of feelings because we are complex human beings. And it's about how do we internally manage all that without puking on everybody around us, right? All our emotions, or having no boundaries, and commanding people to do things because your fear level is high. And it's complicated. And it's this journey of being able to go inside, self-soothe, and come out in this place that you're so grounded, that you're so peaceful. That's the goal, isn't it? To have more joy and fun and play in your life, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard. And I'm thinking in this specific situation, it's, as I'll say the mom, because I know you have kids,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's sort of like a larger group process going on too.
Yes.
As from someone, I'm not really clear on, I'm thinking as a mom myself, when I'm doing the process and managing myself, I guess my question is, part of me as a mom wants to make sure everybody else is okay too.
Yes.
Is that part of the process, or how? I mean, I'm just trying to come to terms with how do I deal with that part of it.
You nailed it. My journey all this week, because I tend to be martyrdom, take care of everybody till I run myself ragged and exhausted. In my 59 years of age, I've learned how to pull back and actually give breathing room to my children so that they can actually make their own decisions. I'm not influencing them. They can come to me for support with really good boundaries on their end and my end. This is a new journey in the last 10 years of my life. How do I pull back appropriately so I'm loving and supportive and not chronically codependent? And typically when we think codependence, we think of like someone married to an alcoholic. I was that many years ago. And my journey has been one about releasing codependence, because codependence is an addiction all on its own. It's so much easier to worry and be upset and be concerned about your children's problems or people in your lives' problems, because you don't have to look at your own stuff.
Oh, bingo.
You don't have to feel your grief. You don't have to feel your anger. You can stay so busy in that high place of running around with like a chicken with your head chopped off, taking care of everybody. And it's very inauthentic, because when it all comes down to it, you're the only one you got. And I love that I'm learning these lessons at this stage in my life, and I'm getting pretty good at it. It's like getting more and more freedom internally, and it feels really good.
Wow. I'm thinking about when I got my diagnosis and the complex things, and what you just said about the boundaries and taking care of yourself. When I got the diagnosis, hit home hard and quick.
Yes.
And to understand focusing on myself. At the time, I had the old frame of that was being selfish.
Yes.
And yet I realized when I had the health crisis, wow, if I don't have self-care, I'm not going to be around at all to help anyone else at any point.
Yeah. In some ways, a health crisis is a deep blessing because it forces you to look at yourself, right? And to take care of yourself. It's as you start navigating with the people in your relationship. Like, here's a perfect example. Okay. We're done with the funeral. I'm there with I have 2 children. I have a husband now that I've been with for 27 years. We've been married 27 years. So this previous marriage is from 30 years ago, right? And so we're at the funeral, seeing sisters-in-law and folks I haven't seen in 30 years. being a grounding space for my kids. My kids had a lot going on. And then my husband and I took 2 cars. I asked for that for my own internal boundaries so I could have some of my own space, because then I know I have a tendency to take care of others. I'm sure people listening can deeply relate, right? And so we're leaving. We're the last ones to leave. And my husband says, let's stop and get dinner. I was so not in a space to stop and get dinner. Actually, I was looking forward to the 45-minute drive to just regroup, let stuff emerge, whatever's going on for me, because I really was grounding, at that funeral. And I said to my husband, and this is a hard thing to do, and I said, you know what, sweetie, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I need to, ground, whatever. He was really upset. He wanted to go have dinner. I've been busy these last 3 days with everybody coming in town. And the trick here was to let him be upset. Not try to fix it, not try to keep saying, I'm so sorry, I can't do it. Like, no, this is what I need. This is what I'm going to do. I know that if I burn bridges on both ends and keep going, I will get sick. I will have sideways anger. I know all those things and how we behave. The hardest thing is telling my husband no and letting him be upset with me without trying to fix his upset. Yay. Hard to do. But you start building a muscle and you get good at it. I'm getting better at it. That's a perfect example of that self-care that's so hard to do.
Absolutely. And I want to give a shout out. You do have an awesome husband.
I do. He's amazing. He really is.
So, oh my goodness, I got a couple tears in my eyes from that, because I can really self-reflect on a few times where I've had that struggle of, it's an internal courage to break the old habits and see what happens. So that's so amazing to me. That's a great story, a great frame for that.
You know what I'd love to add about that, if I can? This distinction between rules and boundaries. Rules are external, boundaries are internal, that foster intimacy. So when I told my husband no to going out to dinner after this all day at the funeral thing, that was my version of intimacy. Even though it didn't land that way for him, he was upset. He felt like I left him out in the cold. I knew that if I didn't say no, that I could have passive aggressive behavior later. Okay, I knew that. It's kind of like when I see chocolate peanut butter ice cream. I know, and I love to look at it now. I haven't eaten it 5-7 years, because every time I eat it, I have a horrible stomach ache and I'm sick for 3 days. And so to actually associate my own internal boundaries with peanut butter chocolate ice cream is exquisite. Rules, on the other hand, are external. Don't cross the street without looking both ways. When you're not in the living room, you turn off the TV. That's an external safety rule in the home. You could have rules at work. So sometimes people get very confused about the distinction between rules and boundaries. Rules are external for the entire collective. Internal is different, because my boundary is going to be different leaving a funeral than someone else's. It's very intimate and personal. And it fosters intimacy in the long run when you stick with it and then keep doing self-care.
As you begin to get good at boundaries, does it ever help to explain why you need the boundary, or do you just set the boundary with the no? Or I'm just thinking that it could come as a shock to some people, like, wow, that's so out of left field.
Yes, especially if you've been in a relationship for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, regardless, friendship or whatever. You've treated each other a specific way for so long, and then all of a sudden you're changing the rules. So understanding it, and I don't mean this facetiously at all, it is like training a puppy. Repeat, rinse, repeat, explain, rinse, repeat, explain. So sometimes with your boundaries, because you haven't exposed people to how you're really feeling vulnerably around this, to continue to keep doing it, continue to have patience, because it's a process. It's not an event. Setting boundaries is a process that you reiterate. And as you keep reiterating, you allow different unpacking thoughts to come out. Like the next day is when I shared with my husband about the funeral. It's like, I was really struggling. I couldn't even fathom the thought of sitting in a restaurant with all that energy coming at me after being so raw at a funeral. In the moment, that didn't happen because there was immediate upset when I said no. And I knew, because I trust our relationship, that the next day I'd be able to unpack that a little bit and start giving little bits of information. And it's just like when you're exercising, or maybe you take on running. You don't start at 10 miles, running 10 miles. You might start at running 2 blocks, or run. Walk for 10 minutes, run for a minute. It's incremental. It's trusting yourself, trusting the outcome, even when you don't know what the outcome's going to be. And it is a process. And that's the beauty of going grounded and knowing and listening to yourself, because you know when to stop. You know when your knee hurts. Like, oh, my knee hurts. That was a minute and a half. I think I'm good. Now I'm going to walk. You know, it's like really listening to yourself.
I love the concept of really listening to yourself, and that is explained in such a universal way. And some of my best healing came on those points of really listening to myself. And interestingly, getting into the juicy bits, where a lot of it was self-talk and not actual physical manifestation, where the healing became the strongest. I'd have these moments of, oh, wow, I just remember that. Where did that come from? And working through those processes, the emotions of it.
Yeah.
And then I would notice amazing benefits of either the shoulder stopped hurting or what have you. It was fascinating to me, the connection between the internal dialogue and the physical body manifestation in my own health and recovery.
Yes. Beautiful.
Wow. Oh my goodness. This is so juicy. I'm not.
I'll come back again. It's all good.
Center myself. I do want to take a little bit of a left-hand turn for just a second, though. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, the term forgiveness. Yes. Interestingly, too, you know, I'm on social media as well. And a couple of times I've put up posts about forgiveness. And yes, now after hearing your explanation of that forgive and forget, I could see how it triggered some people.
Oh,
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the process of understanding. I guess in my mind, I didn't know how to reply to these people when I realized that some words had triggered them around forgiveness.
yes.
I don't know if that's really my responsibility or not. I guess I'm thinking out loud here about the idea of when someone's triggered by this idea of forgiveness being an option.
Let me do this in 2 ways. First way is, we've been doing this so long and we reach so many people. I pretty much heard everything there is to about forgiveness, not being in an arrogant way, but I've seen and heard it all. Because forgiveness for many people has religious roots. We approach it from a research perspective, non-religious, non-partisan. This is about being human beings. There's spiritual benefits for sure. Sometimes I'll incorporate some of my spirituality. And back to that codependency conversation, I really try to pull my stuff out so that I can actually be with people and hear what they have to say. It also goes along, because I'm a media trainer by trade, I train Republicans and Democrats. And my job is to keep bringing people together, regardless of their belief system, which is a really cool place to sit in, right? In a workspace. Forgiveness is the same way. And it's been mired in tough religious conversations for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. We've never really talked about it in a critical thinking mindset collectively in life. And that's why I think people are so attracted to the conversations that we're generating. There's even so many definitions of it. There's so many steps to it. Dr. Wayne Dyer has 11 steps to forgiveness. You'll see 3 steps. You'll see 7 steps. What I did as a researcher and as a scholar, I put it into 5 phases of what forgiveness is. And these 5 phases are similar to grief, like when someone's grieving or lost someone. And I do it this, and I like to do it this way: shock, anger, grief, acceptance, peace. Shock, anger, grief, acceptance, peace. You don't just say, okay, I did this one and check it off. Oh, I did this one and check it off. It's a in and out, up and down, iterative, back and forth process, because it's a journey and it depends upon the level of the offense. When we first started Project Forgive, it came out of a story of a man named Gary Weinstein that lost his entire family to a drunk driver. That's not something you're going to get over in a couple of years. That is a lifelong journey, echoing and going through these stages back and forth a million kabillion ways. Even, I was recently talking to him, he said one of his sons would be graduating high school, whole nother flood of emotion comes up. His son isn't here. His son died at 10. And here we are. He would have graduated high school. The same thing happens when you're doing your own healing process. Like I was at a funeral of my ex-husband. All kinds of memories, things I thought long ago that I forgot about or didn't even care about, all came charging through. Because I know you talk a lot about cellular memory, that we remember things, our body remembers. So I've just embraced in my old age that we are going to be constantly learning or growing or not. We're going to be constantly learning and growing or not. And with forgiveness of those 5 stages, shock, anger, grief, acceptance, peace, depending upon the offense that happened, you'll go through these different stages. One of the things that I've really noticed about anger, it's like a dichotomy. You either avoid it or you embrace it and you stay stuck in it. Okay? That second phase of shock, anger, grief, acceptance, peace. And once you get past through, once you can stop avoiding anger and actually embrace it and go to the third phase of grief, that's when real transformation happens. Because when we're helicopter parents or helicopter grandparents, we don't allow ourselves to grieve our own stuff, what's going on for us, because we're so busy taking care of everybody else. And from what I've seen, what I've experienced, grief changes you. It changes you. Even talking about your diagnosis, even embracing your grief of like, wow, this is a big deal. Wow, I really need to take care of myself. Wow, I could actually die here. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. And a lot of people go through those experiences, right? And there's something that happens when you really accept things the way they are, meaning your feelings, meaning the anger. I had a lot of anger this week. And the more self-soothing I can do to allow that anger to be there will naturally shift into grief where the transformation really happens. The fun part is the peace and acceptance. That's kind of cool when you actually start moving into those phases.
My goodness. We have to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Dr. Shawne about the moving into those phases. That sounds juicy. We'll be right back.
The Autoimmune Hour will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by understandingautoimmune.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star Reader's Favorite Review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there.
Research shows we apologize up to 10 times a day, and most of the time, we say sorry as a response to someone else's mistake. What if we thanked people instead of all that unnecessary apologizing? So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, you say, thank you for listening. Join us at ProjectForgive.com, a free, non-religious resource on global forgiveness.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Taylor from SharonTaylor.com, and tonight we're here with Dr. Shawne Duperon, and she is the founder of the amazing Project Forgive. We've been talking about forgiveness and all sorts of other juicy things about our inner world. The one thing I have found since starting the show in 2015 and over 400 episodes plus is this inner world that we create for ourselves is so important to our healing. As I first began my healing journey, I started in the physical, like, I've got these symptoms and somebody has to fix them and all of this stuff. And yet the show has helped me transform and understand that healing is an inside process as well. And to me, I realized that from a lot of our amazing experts, including Dr. Shawne here, is reiterating that for me, this idea of the past traumas, the way we've internalized our emotions and kept them stuck, play a lot into our physical healing. And that to me is some of the hardest work to do, because you can't just take a pill and be better in the morning.
Darn it.
And I know. And oftentimes, Dr. Shawne, you can't just hand it over to the doctor and say, fix me.
Yeah. No.
Sometimes, not even sometimes, all the time. It's doggone it, it's real work.
It is. Just like losing weight. Gotta diet, we gotta exercise and watch what you're eating. Yep.
Yeah. Although my first thought when it came to me is that I think I noticed losing weight faster than I notice how I'm transforming. It's interesting to me, there'll be times where I'll be doing the work, and then you feel like you're not going or doing anything, and then something will come out of your mouth and you'll go, oh, bravo.
Yeah.
I was finally able to have it pop out into my external world in a productive way. So we were going to talk about acceptance and peace.
Yeah.
Why, when I heard those words, I don't know why, and you may not have the answer, Dr. Shawne, maybe something I have to reflect on, but why did that sound like the hardest part of this whole thing?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's actually the easiest part, because when you look at those stages: shock, anger, grief, acceptance, peace. The first three are the real heavy duty work that forces you to go internal. The natural result is acceptance and peace. So the heavy lifting is the first three. The other two, you kind of float with them. Like, that's been my experience, and even in talking to thousands of people. And I also have a different take. I really believe each of us can define what forgiveness means for us, because we always hear forgive and forget. We always hear forgive them and now you have to stay in a relationship with them. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can forgive toxic people and remove them from your life and still forgive them, accept and have peace around it, and let life teach them the life lessons that they will either learn or not learn. They will either learn or not learn. So when you're defining forgiveness, for me, this is my own personal take on forgiveness. And I have two ways that I look at it. One is, for me, I don't need to concrete forgive. It's not like that for me. You know my story. I know you have lots of folks on it. I'm an incest survivor. Okay, child of trauma. Do I forgive my stepdad? I don't know. What I do know is I accept all the things. I accept all of it. Doesn't mean it hasn't been a 25-year journey as an adult woman. And I have a lot of peace around that acceptance. It doesn't mean that, and can I be really like straight? Like,
Absolutely.
some of my abuse is around the smell of poop. Long story, doesn't mean, but sometimes I can get a whiff of poop or feces and I can go back to being 7 years old. And I have more facility now. I've embraced that's part of who I am. It gets easier and easier as I do more deep, deep exploration. It doesn't all the way go away. Maybe it will. If it ever happens to me, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just accept that that's part of the deal, because accepting all the things that happen for me rather than to me. As a child, they happened to me. I had no control. As children, we have no control. We don't. As an adult, I do. I can choose how I'm going to self-soothe. I can choose who I put in my life. I can choose how I'm going to deal with triggers, or however you want to frame that for yourself. And that's powerful. And some of the benefits that I've received from this trauma, I am a hypersensitive gal. I am. And I love, it was always seen as a negative as a kid. You're so sensitive. Now, when someone says sensitive, like, I sure am. I'm so empathic. I really try to look at all the pieces to be as humane and loving and kind and wise as I can. I love that I'm sensitive. It makes me an exquisite trainer. I can be in a room with 250 people in a keynote. I can feel what's going on in the room. I can adjust what I'm doing or not doing to keep a flow of the wave of the audience. That's exquisite. When I'm at a funeral this week with my ex-husband, I can maneuver and manage. I can feel when someone's is very upset at the funeral and they're not crying because they don't have that capacity, and just know to come sit close and be with them just in that moment to share. So there's always good positives and negatives to all our experiences. One of the, when we were first talking, if I can go into grief just a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that okay? So grief for me is a complicated process, because you've got your head stuff with your anger, your justifications, your blame. Blame is a trap. Blame keeps you busy from getting really to the heart of the matter of what might really be upsetting you. I've been diving into systemic racism. That interests me. I care about my Black and brown brothers and sisters. It's always interested me. So I started diving in during COVID, like, how can I learn more about this? And I discovered a communication theory. I believe it's a communication theory called weathering. I'd never heard of it before. Have you ever heard of weathering?
No, this is fascinating. Okay. We both share a
isn't
love
it
of
fascinating?
communication.
Yeah. It came from a researcher at the University of Michigan, which I went, yay, because I live in Michigan. And it was talked about and created like in the 1990s. Now it's just starting to get some headway because it's being talked about in mass communication in different ways. I believe when you speak about things, that's what really gets caused. And I think that's a lot of the tumultuous conversations we're in now, because there's a lot of talk around chaos, truly, in the world. So anyways, with this weathering theory touched me deeply, because what it asserts, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not saying exact, is that it focused directly on Black women, Black and brown women, and their experience of life, that they're weathered down by life through systemic racism. And I'm like, it hit me so hard. I'm like, that makes perfect logical sense to me. And the notion of Black women have disparities compared to white women with birth rates, it's mind-blowing, the disparities between care for white women and care for women of color. Shocking to me. Then I saw this film called The Toxic Black Woman, The Day in the Life. It was a 20-minute video that showcased 24 hours of the experience of a Black woman. And what struck me, because we hear about, when I talk about white privilege, we hear in our white privilege the hardships that people of color go through. We're not people of color, so we really don't get it. We don't. Okay. And to watch her daily, what she went through the day, And she was pregnant. She had a 16-year-old son as well. And watched how she internalized the messaging, even from her white medical doctors, because she was having pain. And they're like, they poo-pooed it. No, you're fine. Every pregnancy is different. And at first she combated it. And then later in the day, she's talking to another friend and she's actually validating what the doctor said because she internalizes those messages. That was my take from it. I'm going to give away the story because it's an educational tool. She loses her baby at the end of the day. Okay. I grieved. It changed me. I never saw the totality of Black women and weathering, from cortisol levels, everything, immune system. They're inundated, constantly barraged with negative messages, micro decisions. And I can honestly say in my own white privilege that I've never seen Black women in particular as my sisters, because I see women as a sisterhood. And I'm like, wow, this was a ding, ding, ding for me in my own white privilege. It's transformed for me. When I see women of color, I'm drawn to them, not to take care of them, not to martyrdom, not to do any of those, just in that raw, pure beauty of seeing Black women as my sister in systemic racism. That changed me. It changed me. And I'm always looking for things like that, things like weathering, things like looking at something differently, to engage my critical thinking skills and to empower me to transform and be the person I always wanted to be, and that we all want, whatever that is.
And that's one of the things I just absolutely adore and am amazed about you, Dr. Shawne, is your ability to hold multiple perspectives at one time. And then as you work your way through, I always love talking to you and all the insights about being able to hold multiple perspectives and opinions at one time and be able to synthesize them into a way that others can begin to understand the vastness and all the different parts that play into a problem. Too often, including in the medical world, it is a very snap decision, and no one begins to unpack the intricacies of how did I end up here.
Yes. I love how you just so eloquently said that. That was beautifully said.
Well, thank you. Well, and one thing that came up for me at the beginning of this part of the program, as we were talking about the things that we go through, and you were talking about things that you had to release or transform. Yes. I remember one, this was it was during the pandemic, but towards the beginning of it, I'd had a long time of just sitting with something that I wanted to be different, but it was really out of my control, in all honesty, you're just sitting with it. And then I began to realize, because of the forced time of staying alone for a while, being immune compromised, etc., I began to think about, Sharon, that is such magical thinking. What the heck? Does it really matter if that person moves from their position?
Yeah.
And this idea of magical thinking, to me, really hit home. And when I released, I'm getting this idea of your steps of forgiveness and everything, but for me, this wasn't about forgiving, honestly. It was about me releasing that magical thinking that other person had to change.
Yes.
It wasn't, I don't know if I'd put it into the realm of forgiveness. It was just like, I guess coming to terms with it.
Yeah. What reminds me of this is when words come up, because I love words, because words create a lot. And I was in Florida. This was a year and a half ago. My daughter was getting divorced, and she was 8 months pregnant in a high-risk pregnancy. I ended up being with her and helping her with my other 2 grandchildren through this journey. I chose it. I was there for 3 months. Great, because I could leave and go, because my business is online or I travel. So my husband, as you can imagine, was not very happy that I was gone for 3 months. Makes sense. We talked about it a lot, and he kept using the word sacrifice. I hated that word because I didn't feel empowered. Was it truly a sacrifice? Yeah, in the scheme of things, it was. How I was feeling every time he'd say, this is such a sacrifice for our marriage. We're not doing this. And, we're taking care and, whatever. And I said, because I thought about it, critical thinking about it internally. This is my choice. I chose this. I chose to do this. Does it suck? And is it horrible? And is it hard? Absolutely. And I chose to do this for my daughter. I'm investing in my daughter. I'm investing in generational conversations with my grandchildren. I didn't have grandparents that would have supported my mother. I didn't have that. I'm going to be that for my grandchildren. So me and my husband slowly started massaging. You talk about, we started this conversation with boundaries. As I just started unpacking it a little, I'd really prefer we use the word choice instead of sacrifice. It's just a little, little move of the needle, and it just felt better. And allowing myself to find words that have me feel good and explaining it over time, not trying to get it off the checklist. Like, we do our checklist. Oh, I need to tell my husband he can't use the word sacrifice anymore. Check, over. It does not work that way.
Yes, even from experience, I concur.
Yes. So it would be saying something like, oh, we got to change that word sacrifice. I really love the word choice. Remember when we had that conversation, sweetheart? Okay, choice. And then eventually he got with my choice of the word choice. And our conversation started getting more and more intimate. Our solving felt cleaner. Our connection felt deeper. And it's just little things like that that fostered that.
Absolutely. My story about word choices, I have had a client one time who used the word loopy all the time. And after a couple of, I thought, and I added my own definition to that word, I had the presence or moment of insight where I asked them, what is loopy to you? And it was totally different than where I had been putting it, which changed the entire conversation. And then as we went through some more coaching, what was fascinating to me is the word loopy came up again, but in the old definition that I had reintegrated from her the earlier conversation was, it was now loopy had changed just based on time and life experiences. So it taught me to check in when it's a word that can be defined numerous ways. Yes. And I love how you went in deep and realized the personal part of it. No, it's a choice I'm making. Yes, it could be defined sacrifice. And yet the reframe gave it a whole new definition. Not only for, I'm thinking out loud here because I'm thinking if my family labeled it the word sacrifice, then there'd be lots of other things on top of that. Are they feeling guilty that mom is sacrificing? I'm just thinking out loud that, wow, I could just see all these outside dynamics and how much more powerful the word choice is.
Yes. And that's why, piggybacking off even the word forgiveness, you can get, you personally and all of us listening, we can give our own take, spin, understanding about the word forgiveness. Because for me, it's acceptance. That's really what forgiveness means to me. Because here in the big pie in the sky conversation, maybe, and this is going to be radical to some people, maybe forgiveness doesn't even really exist, because what is there to forgive on that big global esoteric place? Because I look at my family heritage, all the women were sexually abused, all the women were codependent, and we're in this patriarchal way of looking at things and misogyny, and the men would always lead the marriages. Just watching the lineage being passed over and over and over and over and over and over again. And when I come to that place, I'm like, wow, I know my parents did the best they could. I know my parents' parents did the best they could. And I could go on and on and on and say, I know Adam and Eve did the best they could. It's like, this is a long lineage, if you believe in Adam and Eve, right? So it's like, wow, from that wide, broad, universal standpoint, that's pretty cool. Doesn't mean I can always be in there when, my grandkid does something that's like way outside the box and it needs to be corrected. I'm like, wow, you get angry. So it's just a beautiful conversation to discuss philosophically, because, ultimately it's up to us who we're going to be and how we're going to behave and what boundaries we're going to set and what we're going to tolerate and what we're going to not tolerate to have our own lives, right?
Absolutely. It's so funny because one of the things I had to forgive myself and my outer community world, whatever you want to call it, a trigger for me was when I heard a family member say to me, as this was early in my development, I was a young adult, I really couldn't stand hearing I did the best I could.
Yes.
It felt like confirming that what happened was okay. And
it's invalidating. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to me when you said that. I had to reprocess it for a quick moment about this idea of, that was an interesting transformation for me to go through the understanding of what that really means. I did the best I could, or they did the best they could, and reframe that for myself. It was a fascinating thing for me as a trigger.
Yeah.
And those triggers can be pretty powerful. Even here we are decades later. And when you said it, it took a moment of reprocessing and reframing that for me to come back to center on that, on just hearing generic words. They're just words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really about our own groundedness with words, because we hear all these words out there from politically, we hear words. In education, we hear words. I know some people might even been triggered by the word white privilege. I love that word. I've really worked with that word. I've really studied what white privilege actually is. Same thing with critical race theory. I've really studied what that is. So those triggers have disappeared for me around those words. And I can see people bristle with those words. So a lot of times when we're training, when we're actually doing something on critical thinking, we start unpacking words. What does this word mean to you? And it's interesting what comes up. And that's a lot of the culture problems that a lot of corporations are facing, because the CEO might say, we're going to respect each other. And everyone in that room has a different definition of what respect is. Every single person. From race to gender, it doesn't matter. We have different understandings. And in cultures, when the real leadership happens is when the leader unpacks for the audience, maybe in a moment, this is what I mean by respect in this instance, okay, let's start defining what respect means for us within our company or within our family system. We get to decide, because this is what I think is so funny about conflict is I really believe that, I don't have it statistically, just from experience in doing conflict resolution for so many years, that 90% of conflict happens before anybody opens their mouth.
Probably.
It does. It really, or one word is said and then it splinters because we have different understandings of a word. That's why words matter. One recent example for me was, we did a poster in social media, like, I love my tribe of women are amazing or whatever. I had a couple people say something to me. One of them is a woman I deeply admire over at Corteva AgriScience. And she said, I know you have 2 Native American children, and tribe is an interesting choice of words. And I'm like, yes. I'm not being beat down by the morality police. I care about the words that I use. And I even asked my children how they felt about it. And they said, yeah, I probably wouldn't use that in business. And I thought about all the folks I know from all different backgrounds. That doesn't resonate for me anymore. I can't use that word, not because I'm censoring myself, It's because I'm grounded, loving. This is my choice. I'm so about being inclusive. And many people from Native American descent might not feel good with that. And if I can be sensitive to that, yay, rock and roll,
And I'm thinking about in the medical wellness world, the medical journey world, of understanding that point alone is the difference. That we all define words differently, and allowing ourselves to hold multiple viewpoints. And I love the way the person who just commented on it did it without throwing barbs or putting the thought into your, chastising you in some way. It was just a moment that allowed for greater thinking, allowed for deeper thinking about things. And when we can talk to each other that way is, to me, the importance. And in reflecting in my medical journey, I've had multiple times been told things as blatantly as "you'll never recover." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, let's see that great thing right there, right?" Yes. Or you're given these terrible statistics or things like that. I love this idea of how can we encourage deeper thinking in words in graceful and gracious ways by just planting a seed. Was talking to a doctor about how well I was thriving, and they had to point out that moment, "Now, you're not recovered. You're just in remission," with the finger wag.
Yeah.
And I honestly took the moment there to say, you can call it whatever you want, but I choose to frame it that I am getting better and stronger every day. And just a side note, it really doesn't help when someone tells me that's not possible.
Yes.
And they took it at first, I think they went into that shock.
Yeah.
But we've had a conversation about it since, and they appreciated that, okay, from somebody's point of view, the science part of it really wasn't the important part. It was hope. It was about holding someone else in a space where they could grow and they could change.
I love you. You're so cool.
So are you, honey. That's why we get along. We're just down to the last 2.5 minutes. Time flies with you, Dr. Shawne. What would you like to share in the last couple of minutes? And then how do people find you, get a hold of you?
Yeah, perfect. I think the perfect way to close is internal power with the apology you'll never receive. I'll just explain it so people can get an essence of it. And of course, anybody can find me on Facebook, online. We're projectforgive.com or Project Forgive on social media. I go by Dr. Shawne. You can go to drshawne.com, and it's a unique spelling, DRSHAWNE.com, Dr. Shawne, if you want to check out what we do or connect. Happy to connect with you. The apology you'll never receive is an internal job because we have no control over people at all. And I always use the story of my neighbor. I'm going to call him Bob. I'd go out to the mail, and as soon as I see Bob, I'm annoyed. He annoys the frick out of me because he says stuff like, "Good morning, Dr. Shawne." And I'd be like, "Yeah, but Bob, it's 6 p.m. And he'll say, "I know, but you look like you just got up." Ooh. Okay, we get the essence of that. Okay, that uncomfortable, awkward social stuff, that's just annoying. And what I noticed, though, is that over time, his experience of me was mean, nasty, and defensive. And that isn't going to work for me as the forgiveness lady, right? So I started practicing in my mind's eye, because we're so powerful. Our internal world is so powerful. I started pretending he was apologizing. So as soon as I'd see him and I can feel that whoosh at my body, and we all have someone that drives us nuts, whether we avoid him at work, a family member at Thanksgiving, or whatever, we all have somebody. And so I started pretending he was apologizing. He wasn't apologizing. And I just started pretending. He would say, in my mind's eye, he'd say, "Oh, Dr. Shawne, I'm so embarrassed. I put my foot in my mouth again. I'm really working on my social skills. Would you forgive me?" And I just kept practicing that over and over. And I discovered it frickin' worked. Because our brains are so powerful. You think of a lemon, you get a lemon in your if you think of a lemon, you get the taste in your mouth. So we created tools around that. for self-discovery, self-empowerment, self-grounding, self-forgiveness, and it's stellar. It really works.
It does really work. I've gone through the process several times. They're always amazing and transformative. And it's one of those things you can use anytime, anywhere, and even with yourself. I loved it when I was with another person, very powerful, using the process with another person to guide through that. But I found you can do it with yourself. It's amazing. So everyone, that's Dr. Shawne Duperon. It's DrShaWne.com, as well as projectforgive.com. We'll have that up at Understanding Autoimmune, so you can reference it at any time. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, and deepest sympathies to you and your family, honey. It's a tough time, and we're here to support you through that.
I honor you for all you're creating around immune systems, understanding, your support of forgiveness, your open heart. You are a precious jewel of a human, and I adore it.
I adore you too, but you're going to make me cry here, honey. Anyway, everyone, have a great week, whatever your adventures, and join me next week for another brand new episode. Enjoy. Thank you so much, Dr. Shawne, for taking the time.
That was stellar.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.